Chapter 201. There's not one who can fight. Yu Xiaogang sighed, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked toward the spectator stands of Shrek Academy. After the previous match, the students of Shrek Academy were all hurt to varying degrees. Daimubai, Oscar, and Ma Hongjin, among others, only had superficial wounds that Zhang Ju could treat. Tang San was different. His spirit had been shattered, and his injuries were severe. Such damage could not be fixed quickly. Shrek Academy had already lost the first elimination round. If they lost another match, they'd be out of the competition. When he reached the stands, Yu Xiaogang saw Flender get to his feet and come over. "Xiaogang, how did it go?" Flender asked softly. "I sent Tianheng to ask. Frost Snow Pavilion refused to help," Yu Xiaogang answered. "Then we'll have to think of something else." Flender sat down beside him. Yu Xiaogang picked a random seat and stared into the distance. "If Tang San's injuries don't heal, we might not even make it into the preliminaries." Flender fell silent. Yu Xiaogang frowned, lost in thought. After a long moment, a sharp light came into his eyes. He reached into his robe and pulled out a token, the Supreme Pontiff Order Tang Hao had given him back in Wielding City. "I think I have a way," he said. He slid the order into view and looked toward the VIP section. "What way?" Flender asked. "The Supreme Pontiff Order." Flender's brow tightened when he saw it. "Little San's father gave that to you in Wielding City. It might come in handy now." Yu Xiaogang rose and walked toward the VIP area. Flender watched him go but didn't follow. He waited quietly in the stands. In the VIP section, Yeshi occupied Ling Yuan's seat while Ling Yuan stood behind her. Emperor Shuiye sat nearby. "Xiaoxi, among all the teams here, which do you favor the most?" he asked. Yeshi considered, then smiled confidently. "Your Majesty, besides our Frost Snow Pavilion, I don't think there's anyone who can fight. In fact, among my peers so far, I don't even see an opponent." Her voice brimmed with youthful arrogance. Emperor Shuiye, Ning Fengji, Solace, and Shui Qinghe all turned their attention to her. Full of vigor, a favored daughter of heaven, Chen Xin, standing behind Ning Fengji, thought admiringly. That kind of youthful brashness, he reflected, had been seen in only a few in the previous generation: Tang Chen and Qian Daoliu, the two peaks, Tang Hao at his height, and Yu Yuanzhen of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan before its decline. "It's bold, but it might be the truth for now," he mused. Ning Fengji smiled gently. "If you're not brash when you're young, when will you be? If I had achieved what Xiaoxi has, I might have been even more arrogant." Emperor Shuiye laughed and waved a hand. He looked at Yeshi with clear approval. She seemed perfect as the imperial crown princess, decisive where Shui Qinghe was gentle. Shui Qinghe poured a cup of clear tea and set it in front of Yeshi, who accepted it with a sweet smile. The emperor watched them with obvious delight. A guard approached. "Your Majesty, someone outside is holding a Supreme Pontiff Order and says he wishes to see Bishop Solace." Everyone's eyes turned to Solace. A Supreme Pontiff Order? Could an elder have arrived in Heaven Dew City? Solace stood, bowed slightly to the emperor, and said, "Your Majesty, I will go and see." Without waiting for permission, he left the VIP section. Outside, Solace found Yu Xiaogang standing there, the Supreme Pontiff Order in his hand. Solace bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Elder." Solace's respect was directed at the order, not Yu Xiaogang himself. In their system, whoever held the Supreme Pontiff Order carried the authority of the Supreme Pontiff as if he were present. Yu Xiaogang toyed with the token and said, "Solace, there's something I need you to do." In the recent match between Shrek Academy and Qiyu Academy, the Qiyu students were too heavy-handed. Several Shrek team members were seriously injured. However, spirit abilities are blind to intent. Giving one's all in a match can also be a form of respect for an opponent. Yu Xiaogang's tone was calm. Solace's expression shifted briefly before settling back into professional neutrality. "Elder, what do you propose?" "I want the support spirit masters from Qiyu Academy to treat Shrek Academy's injuries," Yu Xiaogang said. "This shouldn't be difficult to arrange, right?" He fixed Solace with a steady gaze. Yu Xiaogang had considered asking Solace to punish Qiyu Academy for excessive force. Solace, as one of the organizers, could do that. But Frost Snow Pavilion also had influence among the organizers, and Qiyu Academy was essentially a name used by Frost Snow Pavilion. If Yu Xiaogang pushed too hard, Solace might come under pressure from Frost Snow Pavilion. It was wiser to ask for a simple, practical remedy and not make the situation more contentious. Sala's gaze flicked, then he bowed slightly toward the Supreme Pontiff Order. Elder, I'll do my best to handle this. I'll inform you as soon as there's any news. He said it straightforwardly, but inwardly he was dismissive. Salas knew where the real clout lay in the VIP section. While the Supreme Pontiff Order carried weight, it wasn't the actual Supreme Pontiff in person. And the second miss stood right there in front of him. He already had a plan for handling things. Chapter 202. Find a reason to reclaim the Supreme Pontiff's token as soon as possible. Yu Xiaogong gave the order, pocketed the Supreme Pontiff's token, and strode toward Shrek Academy's spectator stands. Yes, Elder, Salas replied, watching Yu Xiaogong's retreating figure in silence. Only after the man had disappeared from view did Salas turn and head for the VIP section. In the VIP area, Salas took his seat without speaking. He had to report the matter of the Supreme Pontiff's token to the young lord and the second miss, but tonight was not the time. The report would have to wait until after the first day's matches, and in private. Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe exchanged subtle glances with Salas, then returned their attention to the arena. As the sun set, the final match decided its victor. The first day of the All-Continent Elite Academy Spirit Master Tournament was drawing to a close. Spectators in the stands rose in orderly waves and filed out, while teams left the Dohun Arena through a separate passage. Emperor Shuiye rose from the VIP section and stepped forward. Shui Qingye, Ning Fengji, Salas, Ye Shi, and the others followed a half-step behind him. When they reached the exit of the Dohun Arena, Emperor Shuiye paused and turned to Shui Qingye. Shui Qingye, see Xiaoxi off, he said in an unusually gentle tone. Father, I will escort Xiaoxi back to Frost Snow Pavilion, Shui Qinghe replied, bowing slightly in a very gentlemanly fashion. I'll trouble you, Shui Qingye. Ye Shi smiled and walked toward Frost Snow Pavilion, Ling Yuan quietly trailing. Shui Qinghe and Ye Shi walked side by side, chatting and laughing as they went. Watching their retreating figures, Emperor Shuiye smiled and chatted with Ning Fengji for a few moments before heading back toward the Tiando Royal Palace. Ning Fengji returned to the seven-treasure glazed tile school. As everyone dispersed, Salas remained where he was, glanced at the time, and decided he would report the token matter later that night when it was quiet. Frost Snow Pavilion, Ye Shi's room. Ye Shi and Qian Renshui sat facing each other across a low table. Ye Shi rested her arm on the table, propping her head on her hand as she looked at the woman opposite her. Sister, I'll need to return to Spirit City in a little while. Will you come with me? Qian Renshui asked. Aren't you planning to wait until the tournament ends here before returning? Ye Shi asked. Your Frost Snow Pavilion team will almost certainly advance, Qian Renshui said lightly. With Tian Yao on the team, it's a sure thing. Whether I'm in Heaven Do City or not doesn't matter. I'm going back because I need grandfather's help with something, Ye Shi said softly. Grandfather's help? Qian Renshui blinked, surprised. What could the assessment be that even you can't handle alone? Ye Shi leaned forward, her voice low. The second god assessment is too difficult. The time they give me isn't enough. I have to ask grandfather for help. Qian Renshui's eyes widened in curiosity. What is the assessment? Seize the Asura demon sword from the Slaughter King and become the new Slaughter King, Ye Shi said plainly. Slaughter King? Qian Renshui frowned. Is he very strong? The name Slaughter King might sound unfamiliar, Qian Renshui admitted, but his other name you definitely know. Ye Shi went still. What? Tang Chen, Qian Renshui said, matching Ye Shi's tone. On hearing the name, Ye Shi's expression turned grave. Xiaoxi, are you sure? Qian Renshui asked. I heard grandfather say Tang Chen disappeared decades ago. No one knows where he is. Yes, Ye Shi said without hesitation. I'm certain. Qian Renshui thought back to the time she had heard Qian Daoliu speak of Tang Chen when she was a worshipper. If she remembered correctly, Qian Daoliu once said he had lost to Tang Chen by half a move. Ye Shi continued, recounting Tang Chen's story, how he had been possessed by the nine-headed bloody Crimson Bat King, how that parasite had affected him. Even if Tang Chen's power has declined because of the nine-headed bloody Crimson Bat King, he's still beyond my current ability. That's why I need grandfather. If I just keep cultivating during the allotted time, I won't be able to finish the assessment, she added helplessly. If that's the case, you definitely need help, Qian Renshui said, smiling wryly. Apart from grandfather, I don't think anyone else can do it. Understanding now why Ye Shi found the second assessment so daunting, Qian Renshui asked softly, "When do you plan to go back to Spirit City?" "After I take care of a few matters here," Ye Shi replied. "It'll probably take about 10 days. "Okay, I'll go with you," Qian Renshui said, pouring herself a cup of tea. Just as Ye Shi opened her mouth to speak, Ling Yuan's voice came from outside the door. "Young lord, young miss, Solace has arrived." Qian Renshui set down her teacup and, without turning, said slowly, "Let him in." The door opened and Solace entered the room. "Young lord, second miss." He bowed respectfully to both of them. Qian Renshui gestured for him to rise. Ye Shi watched silently, not intending to speak. Solace began to recount the events concerning the Supreme Pontiff's token. When he finished, both Qian Renshui and Ye Shi exchanged a look and their eyes narrowed almost at the same time. "Solace, find a reason to reclaim the Supreme Pontiff's token from Yu Shaogang," Ye Shi said in a clear, pleasant voice. Chapter 203, Solace's Hesitation. Hesitation flickered in Solace's eyes. He looked at Ye Shi, then at Qian Renshui standing beside her. "Second miss, according to the rules, my men have no right to retrieve the Supreme Pontiff token. If they take it without permission, it would be insubordination. If the authorities punish me—" He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Whenever matters involved the Supreme Pontiff Palace or the Hall of Offerings, Solace felt trapped. He dared not offend either side. He still didn't know where Yu Shaogang's Supreme Pontiff token had come from. If it had been bestowed by His Holiness the Supreme Pontiff and Solace retrieved it, the consequences would be severe. But if he refused the second miss's orders, his own fate might be worse. Solace glanced at Qian Renshui, waiting for instructions and for any sign she might disagree. "Do as Xiao Shi says," she answered. "I will bear full responsibility for anything that happens." Ye Shi's voice was calm. "If you can't handle it, say so. If you can't even deal with such a small matter, we can find someone else to serve as the Platinum Bishop of Spirit Hall." Qian Renshui frowned, a hint of displeasure in her tone. "Please rest assured, I will resolve this as quickly as possible." Solace bowed deeply to both of them, his expression solemn. "I will withdraw." Qian Renshui waved him off. "You may go." After Solace bowed again and left quietly, Qian Renshui crossed her legs and cast a dissatisfied look toward Spirit City. She treats the Supreme Pontiff token as if it's nothing, handing it out to anyone. Ye Shi shook her head gently. "Sister, you might be mistaken about the Supreme Pontiff. Yu Shaogang's token was probably not given by the Supreme Pontiff," she continued. "Besides the various elders, each sect master of the upper three sects has one. Back when the Clear Sky sect hadn't gone into seclusion, Tang Hao was being groomed as the next sect master. The Clear Sky sect's token ought to be with Tang Hao. Tang Hao's son is now Yu Shaogang's master. If I'm not wrong, Yu Shaogang likely received that token from Tang Hao." Ye Shi spoke with a light, offhand air. Qian Renshui blinked, then mulled it over and found Ye Shi's deduction reasonable. Still, she set the thought aside. She had already told Solace to find a reason to retrieve the token, who had given it no longer mattered. "Sister, are you going back to the Tiando Royal Palace tonight?" Ye Shi glanced at the time and then at Qian Renshui. "No. Shui Ke often stays overnight at Frost Snow Pavilion, so what's wrong with Shui Qinghe staying there tonight?" Qian Renshui answered bluntly. "Then let's rest. It's already late, and we have things to attend to tomorrow." Ye Shi rose, stretched, and sat on her bed to enter meditation. Qian Renshui followed suit, sitting cross-legged beside her. Because they were so close, Qian Renshui could smell a faint, delicate fragrance from Ye Shi. She found herself staring. An odd emotion showed in her eyes, as if she were lost in thought. Time passed slowly into the night and then into early morning. Ye Shi surfaced from meditation, her azure eyes opening as she exhaled a soft thread of qi. Qian Renshui's gaze remained fixed on her. "Sister, what's wrong? Is there something on my face?" Ye Shi reached up and checked, then scanned her clothes. Nothing was wrong. Qian Renshui cleared her throat. "Cough, nothing." She stepped down from the bed. Ye Shi considered for a moment, didn't press, and also stood. "It's still early. Let's go have breakfast." She walked to the dressing mirror, picked up a wooden comb, and began to smooth her hair. "All right," she said. Qian Renche came up behind her and took the comb with a smile. Xiaoxi, let me help. No need, sister. Yeshi started to rise, but when Qianrei's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, she sat back down. It's fine, just combing. Qian Renche brushed through Yeshi's hair with gentle, practiced movements. Yeshi felt her cheeks warm and her heartbeat quicken ever so slightly. When Qian Renche finished, she caressed the strands and nodded in satisfaction. Xiaoxi, what do you think? Qian Renche set the comb down and looked at Yeshi in the mirror. Whatever sister does is naturally perfect. Let's go eat. Yeshi rose, meeting Qian Renche's eyes. With a soft snap of her fingers, Qian Renche let a faint golden light ripple around her, restoring her appearance as Shui Qinghe. The two walked toward the door together. Ling Yuan stood in the doorway and bowed respectfully. Young miss. Ling Yuan, come have breakfast with us. Yeshi and Shui Qinghe moved toward the dining room, Ling Yuan following unobtrusively behind. A breeze ruffled Yeshi's loose hair. Ling Yuan's expression briefly sharpened. She had been at Yeshi's side since she left Spirit Hall and could tell that Yeshi's hairstyle today hadn't been done by herself. Yeshi normally pinned her hair up. Wearing it down was usually a sign of haste. They took their seats in the dining room. Maids soon brought out delicate dishes and set them before Yeshi, Shui Qinghe, Ling Yuan, and the others. Shui Qinghe picked up her bowl and chopsticks, sampled the food, and chatted with Yeshi, glancing at her now and then. Ling Yuan ate quietly, listening but offering no interruptions. Chapter 204, Revocation of the Papal Decree. Breakfast was over in a flash. Yeshi, Ling Yuan, and Shui Qinghe left the dining hall and walked toward the front hall. When they arrived, Tianyao Duguyan, Ye Lingling, Yang Miao, and the others were already waiting. Let's go, Yeshi said, to the Dohun Arena for the second day of the competition. She glanced at Shui Qinghe standing beside her, eyes questioning. Shui Qinghe reached out and gently stroked Yeshi's hair. Yeshi flushed briefly, but waved it off and nodded as though nothing had happened. You all go ahead, Shui Qinghe said. I need to return to the Tiando Royal Palace first. Shui Qinghe left the Frost Snow Pavilion and headed for the palace. Watching him disappear, Yeshi gave a small wave and led the group toward the Dohun Arena for the next round. Meanwhile, at Shrek Academy, Bishop Solace strode down the corridor with his hands clasped behind his back. He pushed open the door to Yu Xiaogong's room and stepped inside. Yu Xiaogong and Liu Erlong were seated by Tang San's bed, both frowning at the boy's pale face. At the sight of Bishop Solace, Yu Xiaogong stood up immediately. Solace, how have matters been handled? Yu asked, putting his own hands behind his back, his tone grave. That will have to wait, Bishop Solace replied. I have other business first. His eyes sharpened. I checked the Spirit Hall records. Among those who hold a Supreme Pontiff's order, your name was not originally listed. Explain who gave you this order, or where you obtained it, Solace continued. If you cannot, I have reason to suspect it was acquired improperly, and I will reclaim it. Yu Xiaogong's face hardened. What do you mean by this? Exactly what I said, Solace answered evenly. If you cannot explain, you must hand over the Supreme Pontiff's order. I will reclaim it. Yu's expression grew dark. You're only a platinum bishop. What right do you have to do that? Because I am the one doing it, Solace replied, unhurried and composed. The two men locked eyes. Liu Erlong stepped forward, fists clenched, ready to intervene, but Bishop Solace ignored her. As a spirit Douluo and a bishop of high rank, he was not afraid of a confrontation, and he did not expect anyone in Shrek Academy to try to lay hands on him over this. I was given this Supreme Pontiff's order by Tang Hao of the Clear Sky sect, Yu said after a moment, trying to sound confident. Tang Hao died years ago. What proof do you have to the contrary? Solace chuckled softly, hands still behind his back. You say Tang Hao is dead. How are we supposed to prove otherwise? Liu Erlong moved up in front of you and spoke with a cold edge. If you can't prove it, then hand over the Supreme Pontiff's order. Next time, it won't just be me who comes. Hearing that, Solace's eyes narrowed. At first he had worried the order might have been personally bestowed by the Supreme Pontiff, which would have made reclaiming it difficult. But now, learning it allegedly came from Tang Hao, long deceased, Solace felt confident. If it hadn't been granted by the Supreme Pontiff himself, there was no reason not to take it back today. Yu Xiaogong fell silent, studying Solace carefully. He quickly realized Solace was determined. Pondering the options, Yu finally took the Supreme Pontiff's order from his robe and tossed it to Bishop Solace. Solace caught it, slipped it away, and turned toward the door. As he reached for it, the door opened, and Ning Fengji and Ning Rongrong stepped in. "Bishop Solace," Ning Fengji said in surprise, then quickly recovered with a gentle smile. "Schoolmaster Ning." Solace's eyes flicked toward Ning Fengji before he turned away and left without another word. Ning Fengji paid him no mind and walked into the room. "Grandmaster, please forgive my unannounced visit," Ning said politely, his gaze falling on Tang San after a quick assessment of the scene. "Schoolmaster Ning, you're too kind," Yu replied with a strained smile, nodding toward Tang San. "His condition doesn't look good. Could you take a look?" Ning Fengji moved to Tang San's bedside and began a careful examination. After a moment, his brow drew together. He looked up at Yu and Liu Erlong. "Have you found a healing spirit master?" "Without a healer, it could take a very long time for him to recover," Ning said quietly. Yu Xiaogang shook his head. "We've tried. Among the free spirit masters in Heaven Do City, true support healing spirit masters are scarce. Those who can treat Little San's injuries effectively are even rarer." "If that's the case, let me help," Ning Fengji offered with a soft smile. "I know a few healing spirit masters who might be able to help." Relief lit Yu's face. "Schoolmaster Ning, I'd be much obliged." Ning simply smiled and nodded, then set about arranging the matter. Chapter 205, Blazing Academy Duhun Arena, the Blazing Academy's rest area. Huo Wushuang sat with his eyes closed in meditation, while Huo Wu, the vice captain, stood by the tall window, watching the scene below. Footsteps sounded in the corridor outside. Huo Wushuang opened his eyes and looked toward the door. Huo Wu did the same. A graceful figure in a silver gown, long silver hair falling down her back, stepped in. Both siblings looked surprised when they recognized her. They knew of Ye Shi, but the Blazing Academy had never had any direct dealings with her, so her sudden appearance was unexpected. "Pavilion Master Ye," Huo Wu said first, offering a slight bow. Huo Wushuang followed suit. "You don't have to be so formal," Ye Shi replied with a faint smile, her voice clear and melodious. "We're about the same age." "Forgive my abrupt visit," she added. Huo Wushuang watched her smile, feeling oddly distracted. Ye Shi noticed his gaze and briefly frowned. Huo Wu stepped over and lightly tapped Huo Wushuang on the head. "Please don't mind him," she said to Ye Shi. "My brother injured his head in a recent match, so he's been a bit absent-minded." She gave Huo Wushuang an apologetic look and gestured for Ye Shi to sit. As she turned, Huo Wu shot her brother a sharp look. Ye Shi nodded and took a seat. Huo Wushuang cleared his throat. "Do you have business with us, Miss Ye?" "I came to invite both of you to join Frost Snow Pavilion," Ye Shi said plainly, meeting their eyes. "I come with sincerity. If you have conditions, say them, and I will do my best to meet them." The siblings exchanged glances. Huo Wushuang's face showed interest. Just as he was about to speak, Huo Wu stepped on his foot. He winced, and she smiled. "Thank you for your regard, Miss Ye," Huo Wu said. "However, my brother and I can't decide on this alone. We need to return to Blazing Academy and consult with our elders first. It would be presumptuous otherwise. If you're interested, you're welcome to come to Frost Snow Pavilion and find me anytime. I won't trouble you longer." She stood, offered her hand to Huo Wu, then left the rest area. Huo Wushuang's eyes followed her until she was out of sight. Even after the door closed, he kept staring in that direction. "Tsk, big brother, do you need me to go fetch her back since you're going to keep staring?" Huo Wu teased, rolling her eyes. After all, it was rude to openly ogle someone like that. Ye Shi's strength and status surpassed theirs. Even their father, the academy dean, was far below her in standing. Huo Wushuang coughed to change the subject. "I think we should consider joining Frost Snow Pavilion. I've heard their benefits are excellent. Miss Ye personally coming to invite us shows she values us. Resources wouldn't be lacking. Let's wait until the grand competition is over and we're back at Blazing Academy to ask Father before making a decision," he added. "Are you really joining just for the benefits?" Huo Wu's eyes narrowed as she regarded him. "How would I know? I wasn't the one staring at her," Huo Wushuang shot back. "I'm also very beautiful, you know. Why don't you ever look at me like that?" Huo Wu crossed her arms and appraised him. Huo Huo Wushuang returned the scrutiny, then shook his head. I honestly can't feel it. He said it deadpan, and immediately felt Huo Wu's death glare. A faint shimmer of spirit power gathered in her hand. Elsewhere in the Dohun Arena corridor, Ye Shi walked on, deciding where to go next. She narrowed it down. Shifeng Academy first, she murmured. Among the 4 element academies, Feng Xiaoqian of Shifeng seemed the strongest. On her way, she ran into exactly the person she was looking for. Pavilion Master Ye. Feng Xiaoqian bowed slightly at her approach. You don't need to call me that, Ye Shi said with a hint of a smile. I was just heading to Shifeng's rest area to find you. Looking for me? Feng raised an eyebrow, intrigued, and gestured for her to sit nearby so they could talk. I'd like to invite you to join Frost Snow Pavilion, Ye Shi said as they walked. The benefits are excellent. Would you consider it? Join Frost Snow Pavilion? Feng replied slowly. I don't plan to leave Shifeng Academy yet, but after I graduate, Frost Snow Pavilion would definitely be my first choice. In fact, I've already thought about joining before. He spoke softly but earnestly. With your talent, if you join my Frost Snow Pavilion, I can guarantee that in time you'll be among the pavilion's high-ranking members. Ye Shi smiled, but her tone remained serious. Chapter 216, Please Enlighten Me. Miss Ye Feng Xiaoqian returned her smile. Thank you for the compliment, Miss Ye. When I graduate from Shifeng Academy, Frost Snow Pavilion will definitely be my first choice. But before that, he added, voice earnest, I've developed my own spirit technique. If we ever meet in a match, may I ask for your guidance, Miss Ye? Ye Shi regarded him steadily, her blue eyes calm. You want my guidance? Feng Xiaoqian's expression was serious, eyes shining with eagerness. Yes, your strength is obvious to everyone. I know I can't win, but I want to see how big the gap really is. And, if possible, please go easy on me in the match. Feng Xiaoqian smiled faintly. All right, if we meet in a match, I'll grant your request. Ye Shi nodded simply. I have other things to do, so I'll be going. Feng cupped his hands in a polite salute, then headed for Blazing Academy's rest area. Ye Shi watched him go and was about to stand and leave for Tianshui Academy's section when the arena announcer's voice floated down the corridor. Next competing teams, Tianshui Academy versus Kangxing Academy. Please welcome both teams to the arena. Ye Shi suppressed the urge to move. I guess I'll have to wait until Tianshui's match is over, she murmured, and returned to Frost Snow Pavilion's spectator seats. She sat and watched the arena below. A glass of juice was placed in front of her. Following it with her eyes, she saw Duguyan smiling as she offered it. Xiaoxi, try this. The drinks they serve here at the Dohun Arena aren't bad. Duguyan sat down beside her. Ye Shi took a sip and nodded. Tastes good. They watched the match in companionable silence. This is the last elimination round, right? Ye Shi asked quietly. Duguyan did a quick mental calculation and nodded. Yes, it's the final elimination round. After this, it's one-on-one matches. Her tone was casual. Confidence flowed through it. Their team was the strongest in the tournament. Advancing was almost certain. When we get matched with Shifeng Academy, I'll step in personally, Duguyan added. The rest you can handle yourselves. Ye Shi glanced at her. Don't worry, Xiaoxi. One-on-one or team battle, we won't lose. Duguyan tapped her chest, brimming with confidence. Ye Shi only nodded, saying no more. The Tianshui match ended as expected. They won without difficulty. The announcer in the VIP section wasted no time moving into the second round. By coincidence, or maybe not, the first match of that round was Qiyu Academy versus Shifeng Academy. Duguyan's expression shifted as soon as she heard the pairing. She stared at Ye Shi, suspicion flaring. Ye Shi had only just mentioned Shifeng, and now Shifeng was matched first. It looked a little too convenient. Ye Shi met Duguyan's look and shook her head decisively. She hadn't manipulated anything. There was no need. Their team's strength spoke for itself. They didn't need tricks to secure a match. They could beat any opponent fairly. Meanwhile, in Blazing Academy's rest area, Feng Xiaotian and Huo Wushuang were taken aback by the same announcement. What are the chances? Feng thought, surprised. They had just discussed Feng asking Ye Shi for guidance, and now the two academies were paired. Feng didn't linger. Huo Wu, I'm going to compete, he said gently. Rising, he left and made his way back to Shifeng Academy's area. The Shifeng team was preparing to move out when Feng appeared. He raised a hand to stop them. You don't need to go for this match, he said casually. When I lose, we'll just surrender. Murmuring broke out among the teammates. Captain, if we plan to surrender, why not just forfeit now? Qian Academy has a spirit king. Their captain can even seize a spirit fusion with his bare hands. We could conserve our strength for the next round. That's right. If we win the next match, we still had the rest area buzzed with nervous chatter. Feng smiled faintly. I want to see how big the gap really is between me and Miss Yi, he said, then walked out alone toward the arena. He stepped onto the competition platform and scanned the crowd until he found Frost Snow Pavilion's section. Yishi rose and walked to the stage as well. They faced each other, bowed, and the referee signaled the start. You may make the first move, the referee announced. Yishi made a polite gesture, inviting him to begin. Feng hesitated only a moment before nodding. He would accept her offer. If anyone else had extended such a gesture, it might have seemed disrespectful, but Yeshi's reputation gave her the right. Feng knew he wasn't on her level. Behind Feng, his spirit manifested, the double-headed storm wolf. 2 yellow and 2 purple spirit rings flashed beneath his feet, pulsing with power. He launched into the air, his wings and arms beginning to fuse into a single streamlined form. Monsieur, be careful, Feng warned, then streaked forward. Yeshi watched him move and murmured to herself. His self-created spirit technique leaned on speed and gravity to continually amplify attack power. An interesting concept, but one with obvious drawbacks. A soft glow of spirit energy gathered in her hand as she prepared to counter. Feng swooped down, his arms having transformed into razor-like blades. He slashed toward Yeshi with terrifying speed. Chapter 207, Wind Wolf. 36 consecutive slashes facing Feng Xiaoqian's attack, Yeshi calmly extended a hand. Spirit light cloaked the nails on her fingertips and met Feng Xiaoqian's slash. With a clear clang, his blade was stopped. Yeshi stood perfectly still, glanced at her intact nails, then signaled with her eyes for him to continue. Feng Xiaoqian's expression darkened. He took a deep breath and resumed his assault. His speed rose, each slash delivering more force than the last, but every blow was stopped by Yeshi's spirit-hardened nails. She did not move from her spot the entire time. Only after the 35th slash did she notice a faint fracture along the nail she had used to block that blow. Rapid Wind Demonic Wolf, 36 consecutive slashes, Feng Xiaoqian announced. This last one, I don't think you can block it. Yeshi murmured to herself, but still met the incoming strike with her nail. For the final slash, Feng Xiaoqian poured everything into it, spirit power flooding his arm, the attack reaching its peak. His blade struck Yeshi's nail with a twigging crack. The nail snapped off. The whistle of wind tore through her hair, and as her nail broke, Yeshi stepped back to evade the follow-through. In doing so, a strand of her silver hair was cleanly cut away. I was still a bit overconfident, she thought, looking at the broken nail. I'll need to trim my nails later. Feng Xiaoqian stared at the severed nail and the fallen strand of hair. A smile spread across his handsome face, and he began to laugh softly. By the result, he had lost, completely. Yet in his eyes, this was not an utter failure. Yesterday, even when Shrek Academy used spirit fusion, Yeshi had emerged unscathed. Today, he had at least made an impression. He had severed a nail and sheared off a lock of her hair. That to him was satisfaction. If the duel had continued and Yeshi had counterattacked in earnest, he would have been beaten. Since his aim had been achieved, there was no point in prolonging the fight. I concede, Feng Xiaoqian said aloud, retracting the spirit behind him. We, Shifeng Academy, concede. The winner is Qian Academy, the announcer called from the VIP stand. Both teams, please exit the arena in an orderly fashion. Yeshi nodded toward Feng Xiaoqian and walked to Frost Snow Pavilion's viewing area. Feng Xiaoqian left for Shifeng Academy's section. In Shrek Academy's seats, Juju King watched Yeshi's back go by, her eyes thoughtful. Yeshi's words from the stage the day before kept returning to her. Instead of placing your hopes on Dai Mubai, it's better to fight for a path to survive yourself. Juju King inhaled slowly, her face as cool and distant as ever, but her mind churned. Could Dai Mubai contend with Dai Weishi? If he truly believed he could, he wouldn't have fled the Star Luo Empire for the Heavendo Empire and languished at Shrek Academy. Every time she thought of him, she felt frustrated by his lack of ambition. Dai Mubai, I hope you don't disappoint me, she murmured. She stood, preparing to find him and gauge his resolve. If he intended to challenge Daiwasi for the throne, even if the chance was small, she would stand with him. If he remained content to merely survive under imperial rule, she would pursue her own path. Zhu Qing's aim had always been simple: to survive the iron rules of the Star Luo Empire. Titles like Crown Princess or Empress meant nothing if she didn't live long enough to claim them. Meanwhile, Ye Shi did not linger in the Frost Snow Pavilion stands. After grabbing a drink, she made her way to Tianshui Academy's resting area. At the entrance, she paused and knocked 3 times. The door opened to reveal Shui Yuer, whose eyes brightened like tiny stars, an expression Ye Shi had seen on Shuike before. "Hello, please forgive the sudden visit," Ye Shi said with a faint smile, extending her hand. "Pavilion Master Ye," Shui Yuer exclaimed, then eagerly took Ye Shi's hand and ushered her in. "Sister, Pavilion Master Yi is here." "Yuer, I can see her," Shui Binger said, rising and cupping her hands slightly toward Ye Shi as a sign of respect, then motioning for her to sit. Ye Shi nodded and took the seat offered. Shui Binger looked at her directly. "Is Pavilion Master Ye here to invite us to join Frost Snow Pavilion?" Ye Shi replied. "I'm here to invite you. The benefits are generous. Would you consider it?" She smiled as her blue eyes quietly swept across the room, gauging the faces before her. Chapter 208. Angry at his lack of resistance. The Tianshui Academy team was exceptional in Heaven Do, especially Shui Binger, Shui Yuer, and Shui Wu. Their strength was among the Academy's best. If Ye Shi remembered correctly, Shui Binger and Shui Yuer could also use the spirit fusion skill, ice and snow drifting. "Since Pavilion Master you personally extended the invitation, we'll certainly give it careful consideration," Shui Binger said. "Besides, our dean once thought about joining Frost Snow Pavilion," Shui Yuer added. She probably changed her mind because Pavilion Master Ye herself wasn't at Frost Snow Pavilion, which is why our dean didn't go. Shui Binger's voice was steady. Ye Shi's eyes brightened with surprise and pleasure. She had come to recruit Shui Binger, Shui Yuer, and Shui Wu, but Shui Binger's words hinted at an unexpected opportunity. "I was away cultivating for a while and only returned shortly before the tournament began," she explained. "If your dean once considered joining Frost Snow Pavilion, young Miss Shui Binger, could you pass that along? If she's still interested, I can personally visit Tianshui Academy to discuss it." "That would be possible," Shui Binger agreed without hesitation. "Then I won't take up any more of your time." Ye Shi stood, smiled at Shui Binger, and left the lounge. Once Ye Shi had walked out, Shui Yuer watched her sister and then spoke, voice soft with admiration. "Sister, Pavilion Master Ye is so gentle. I think joining Frost Snow Pavilion after we graduate would be a very good choice." Shui Yuer put a hand on Shui Binger's shoulder, eyes shining. "Frost Snow Pavilion is indeed excellent. In strength, it rivals the upper 3 sects, only the title is missing. Its reputation with ordinary people is also top-notch. It's said the handmaids in Frost Snow Pavilion are bought from Heaven Do auctions, and their wages are the most generous, 10 gold coins a month," Shui Yuer continued. "Plus, the Heaven Do royal family supports Frost Snow Pavilion. Resources won't be lacking." Shui Binger replied quietly. "Then what do you suggest?" "Let's wait a little longer," Shui Yuer said, hopeful. "If the Dean and Pavilion Master Ye negotiate well, we could join Frost Snow Pavilion smoothly after graduation. If not, we can still consider joining later. Either way, waiting gives us options." Hearing that, Shui Binger nodded in agreement. Shrek Academy. In a quiet corner beneath an old tree, Zhu King leaned back against the trunk, watching Dai Mubai. "Mubai, what do you intend to do?" she asked, expression cool and unreadable. "What is there to intend?" he answered, voice low. "The rule itself is unreasonable. My elder brother is older. His talent isn't inferior to mine. He already has the advantage. I've been away from the Star Luo Empire for so long. How many officials are siding with Daiwasi?" "So you're ready to accept your fate?" Zhu King prompted. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face. Dai Mubai lowered his head and sat on a rock, silent for a long moment. Finally, he looked up at her. "Zhu King, that look, what is it?" He took a deep breath, forcing calm. "I'm angry at your lack of ambition." Zhu King's usually reserved voice tightened. "Ambition? How do you expect to have any chance if you don't try?" Daimubai said, clenching his fists and punching the rock beside him. I don't know the odds, but I do know this. If you don't try, there's zero chance. If you do, there's at least a possibility. She stared at him, unblinking. Under her gaze, Daimubai fell silent, eyes shifting as he ran through calculations in his head. He couldn't see a path to victory. Daiwasi had the timing, the geographical advantage, and the support of the officials. Daimubai had none of that. He had been gone for years. The Star Luo officials favored Daiwasi. In a head-to-head contest, he wasn't even sure he could contend. The rules allowed all sorts of methods. Nothing seemed to weigh in his favor. After a long, wordless sigh, Juju King turned and walked back to her room. Daimubai reached out as if to speak, then let his hand drop. Leaning back against the rock, he looked up at the clear blue sky and muttered to himself, "Contend? How do I contend? I don't want to just accept this fate, but I can't see any way to win." Inside her room, Juju King locked the door and lay on the bed, thinking. Daimubai might be unwilling to fight, but she had to. Even if she ultimately failed, she would not regret trying. If you're willing to fight, there's always a chance. If you don't try, there's none at all. Chapter 209. You can go to Moon Pavilion to take a look. Just as Juju King was lost in thought, Oscar's voice came from outside the door. Ju King, the Grandmaster wants us to come. It looks like Little San's condition has improved. Juju King pushed herself up from the bed and went to the door. She opened it and nodded slightly at Oscar, then followed him toward Grandmaster Yu Xiaogang's room. Inside, Tang San was already sitting up. His complexion was still a little pale, but markedly better than before. Yu Xiaogang and Liu Erlong sat at his bedside. Flender and Ning Fengji were at the wooden table, sipping tea. Ning Rongrong stood by Ning Fengji, while Ma Hongjun, Daimubai, and the others lingered around the room. Juju Qing glanced once at Daimubai, then leaned against the wall by the door and stayed silent. When everyone had gathered, Yu Xiaogang rose from Tang San's side. His gaze swept the room as he spoke slowly. We lost the first round. From now on, if we want to keep advancing in the competition, we can't afford another loss. The second round will be one-on-one. Although Little San has improved, he hasn't fully recovered. So this next round is on you all. His eyes fell on Daimubai, Ma Hongjun, Juju King, and the others. Ma Hongjun readily agreed, but Daimubai and Juju King were quieter. Yu Xiaogang didn't press them. Ning Fengji, turning his teacup in his hand, regarded Tang San with a contemplative expression. "Little San, do you mind if I call you that?" Tang San smiled weakly and inclined his head. "Not at all. You should also thank me for arranging the healing spirit master. If not for that, who knows when your injuries might have healed." Tang San bowed slightly. Ning Fengji waved the bow away. "If you have the time, Little San, you might consider visiting Moon Pavilion and meeting the pavilion's Xuanju." Tang San's eyes showed surprise. Moon Pavilion was well known in Heaven Do City, more for court etiquette than anything else, so he wondered why Ning Fengji would suggest it. He looked at Ning Fengji, searching for more information, but Ning Fengji only smiled gently and fell silent. Standing to the side, Juju Qing's expression changed when she heard Ning Fengji's suggestion. An idea seemed to strike her. If she couldn't find a solution herself, she could ask someone for advice. She began mentally listing who might be able to help and how she might approach them. Tang San inclined his head to Ning Fengji. "Thank you for your advice, Senior. Once my injuries recover more, I will visit Moon Pavilion." Ning Fengji set down his cup. Your wounds are only partly healed. Rest and recover first. Ning Rongrong, it's time for us to go," he said, rising and leading Ning Rongrong toward the door. Yu Xiaogang, Liu Erlong, and Flender stood to see them out. After they left, the room felt a little quieter. Juju Qing glanced around and then retreated to her own room without a word. At the Frost Snow Pavilion spectator seats, Ye Shi sat filing her nails as she watched the competition below. A small smile touched her lips. When she finished, she held her hands up, examined them, and nodded in satisfaction. "Our second round's over. There's no point watching more," she said. "How about we all go out to celebrate?" She looked at Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Yang Yan, Yang Miao, and the others with bright eyes. "Go out to celebrate? That's a great idea." Du Guyan, who had been idly fussing with her emerald green nails, rose at once. Even Tian Yao, who had been eating pastries, looked up in agreement. The others readily approved as well. Then let's get ready, Yishi said. We'll leave early today. She stood and walked toward the VIP section. No one questioned her. Everyone knew why. Ling Yuan always accompanied Yishi, and Ling Yuan was currently representing Frost Snow Pavilion, seated in the VIP area. Yishi had only gone to fetch him. Soon, Yishi and Ling Yuan appeared at the entrance to the spectator area. Let's go, Yishi said, snapping her fingers. Ling Yuan fell in step half a pace behind her. Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, Yang Yan, Yang Miao, and the others followed. They left the Dohun Arena and made their way to the busiest street in Heaven Do City. Yishi led them to an upscale restaurant. As they entered, a waiter greeted them respectfully. Welcome, honored guests. Prepare a luxurious private room, Yishi instructed softly. Right this way, the waiter said, and led them to a secluded room. Yishi took the menu the staff handed her and ordered several favorite dishes, then pushed the menu toward the others. Today's a celebration. Don't feel constrained. The more modest members, Yang Yan, Yang Miao, Niu Kong, Niu Tian, and a few others, exchanged glances and nodded, though their faces still showed a hint of awkwardness. Chapter 210, Drunk Yishi. After everyone ordered, the server collected the menus and turned to Yishi, who sat at the head of the table. Miss, our specialty is drunken fruit wine. It has a very light alcohol content and a strong fruity aroma, very suitable for ladies. Would you like to try it? Yishi considered for a moment. Bring 3 bottles to start, and 2 bottles of your best wine, please. The server bowed slightly and left the private room. Once he was gone, Yishi began chatting with Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and the others. As the conversation warmed, Yang Yan, Yang Miao, and the rest relaxed too. Their respect for Yishi remained, but the evening grew easy and lively. Ling Yuan kept to herself, minimizing her presence and listening quietly. About 40 minutes later, the door opened again. The server returned with platters of food and the wine Yishi had ordered. When the dishes were set out, Yishi picked up a bottle of drunken fruit wine, poured herself a glass, and looked around at Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, and the others. Who wants to try? Du Guyan and the rest nodded. The boys, Yang Yan, Yang Miao, Niu Tian, Niu Kong, also poured themselves a little. Cheers. Yishi lifted her glass, took a small sip, and found the wine tasted almost like juice, very light and fruity. She finished the glass in one gulp. The others followed suit. After a few rounds, everyone loosened up. Even the usually distant Ye Lingling began talking with her neighbors. Laughter filled the private room. Only Ling Yuan remained quietly reserved, tasting the food in front of her. When the first bottles ran out, Yishi ordered more. As she drank, she slowly realized how deceiving fruit wine could be. She was getting tipsy. Her eyes glossed slightly and a faint flush warmed her cheeks. Tian Yao reached out and waved a hand in front of her face. Miss, are you all right? What could be wrong with me? Yishi waved her hand off. How could I get drunk on something that tastes like juice? She picked up her bowl and chopsticks and began sampling the dishes. Tian Yao watched Yishi blink and then glanced at Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, and the others. They looked normal, but Yishi's flushed face and glassy eyes made the situation clear. The second miss had a low alcohol tolerance. Fruit wine could make her drunk. Everyone exchanged looks and quietly decided to keep Yishi from drinking more. After 3 rounds of drinks and several courses, they realized the sky had darkened. The server returned once more with a complimentary plate of fruit. Yishi reached for a piece, but through her slightly blurred vision, the fruit seemed to double. Her blue eyes narrowed, and almost without thinking, she drew the slaughter sword as if to peel the fruit with it. The room fell silent, and everyone stiffened. Tian Yao stood immediately. Du Guyan and Ye Lingling took a step back. Yang Yan, Yang Miao, and the others slid their chairs away. Seeing their reactions, Yishi blinked in confusion. I'm just peeling fruit, she said, bewildered. What's the problem? We're just stretching, everyone answered at once, uneasy smiles failing to hide their concern. They weren't worried about a sober Yishi, but an intoxicated one holding a sword was another matter. If she misjudged a movement, the slaughter sword could easily miss the fruit and hit someone. Let me help you, Ling Yuan said softly. She reached out and took the fruit from Yishi's fingers. Yishi nodded, and the sword vanished from her palm. Ling Yuan peeled and sliced the fruit into small pieces, then fed them to Ye Shi. After a few bites, Ye Shi tried to stand, but swayed. Ling Yuan set her arms around her. "She's a little drunk. Let's go back." Carrying Ye Shi, Ling Yuan left the private room. The others followed. Cradled in Ling Yuan's arms, Ye Shi glanced up, felt safe, and gradually drifted into sleep. With Ling Yuan's familiar presence, she relaxed completely and soon let out a soft snore. Ling Yuan softened her steps even more, careful not to disturb her. Back at Frost's Snow Pavilion, Ling Yuan found Shui Qinghe sitting in the main hall drinking tea. Shui Qinghe came forward at the sight of Ye Shi and smelled a faint trace of alcohol on her. "Has she been drinking?" "She drank fruit wine and got drunk," Ling Yuan replied, nodding toward the sleeping girl in her arms. "You all can head back and rest. I'll take her to her room." Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and the others left, and Ling Yuan carried Ye Shi down the hall. At Ye Shi's door, Shui Qinghe stopped. "Let me take her." Ling Yuan handed Ye Shi over. As Shui Qinghe took her, something golden shimmered over his body and he shifted, his appearance changing into Qian Renshui's. Holding Ye Shi's soft, warm form, Qian Renshui carried her into the room, laid her on the bed, and tucked a blanket over her. Standing at the bedside, Qian Renshui watched Ye Shi's sleeping face in silence. Chapter 211. Aren't we going to be good sisters? Qian Renshui watched Ye Shi sleep and reached out to brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear. A soft, reminiscent smile curved her lips, and her pale golden eyes grew tender as memories of the past years drifted through her mind. She became even more careful with her movements. One playful remark from long ago bubbled up unexpectedly. "Xiaoxi, how about being my crown princess? I'll give the whole Heaven Dew Empire as the betrothal gift." She let out a quiet chuckle. That was just a joke back then. Qian Renshui rose from the bedside and moved to the window, eyes fixed on the glittering stars. Ye Shi, woken by a small thirst, began to sit up, but Qian Renshui's voice floated back into the room like a soft confession. "Xiaoxi, I think I've fallen for you." Even murmured, the words carried perfectly in the stillness. Ye Shi felt as if her mind had been struck. Her cheeks flamed, color rushing to her earlobes. Her heart thudded against her ribs. After a quick, guilty glance at Qian Renshui's back, she forced her eyes closed and pretended to still be asleep. What did those words mean? Were they not going to be good sisters anymore? Qian Renshui, standing by the window, sensed that someone had looked at her. Her eyes swept the room and settled on Ye Shi lying in bed. "Xiaoxi, are you awake?" She moved to Ye Shi's side. The younger woman's flushed face and the faint rise and fall of her breath convinced Qian Renshui that Ye Shi had heard everything and was only pretending. Her own face warmed, ears tinged pink. She almost called out again, "Shi'er," but seeing Ye Shi still feigning sleep, she let it pass. Instead, Qian Renshui poured a glass of water, set it by the bedside, and left the room. No sooner had the door closed than Ye Shi opened her eyes. She reached for the water, cradled the cup in both hands, and walked to the window. The cool night breeze sobered the last of her tipsiness, but not the turmoil in her chest. Qian Renshui's words echoed relentlessly in her mind, and the thought of it made her heart flutter like a trapped bird. Staring at the stars, 1,000 conflicted thoughts shone back at her. Outside the door, Qian Renshui leaned against the wall and stared up at the same sky, her confession replaying in her head until her cheeks burned. Xiaoxi must have been awake, she told herself, but she pretended to be asleep. What is she thinking? Her hands curled into fists as unease knotted in her stomach. She wanted to go back in, to ask, to press for an answer. But what if Ye Shi rejected her? How could they go on after that? The possibility made her throat tight. Separated by only a wall, both women were painfully aware of the other's presence. Neither spoke, and yet their gazes passed through the barrier as if it were glass. Dawn found them still standing on opposite sides of that thin wall. The sky was paling when Ye Shi steadied her breath, set the empty cup down, and walked to the door. Her fingers trembled on the knob. When she opened it, Qian Renshui was still there, leaning against the plaster with a look of anxious hope. "Shi'er, you're awake?" The change in address, so intimate, so different, made Ye Shi's pulse jump and an embarrassed flush creep up her neck. Elder sister," she managed. Qian Renshui brightened at the reply, as if a chance had opened. She stepped forward until she was very near. Yexi's heart pounded so hard it felt like a live thing against her ribs. Her breath caught when Qian Renshui's face moved closer. The space between them narrowed until the world seemed to shrink to the two of them. Are we really not going to be good sisters anymore? Qian Renshui asked softly. Yexi could feel Qian Renshui's warm breath against her cheek, and her sapphire eyes slid closed. As their lips drew near, everything stilled. A voice interrupted, cheerful and unaware. "Young miss, you're up so early." Ghost Leopard came into view, holding a cup of clear tea and taking a step forward. Qian Renshui's hand tightened without her meaning to, and her gaze flicked to him. Ghost Leopard froze in place, sensing that her look held an odd chill. Perplexed, he replayed his recent actions in his head, trying to find what could have displeased the young miss. He had hardly left Frost Snow Pavilion lately. There had been no chance to offend anyone, yet Qian Renshui's expression made him uneasy. Chapter 212. Ghost Leopard. Are you okay? Ghost Leopard, is something wrong? Qian Renshui watched the ghost leopard in front of her, her voice carrying a thread of displeasure. Yexi's eyes opened at the same moment. Seeing Qian Renshui standing there put a strange, unexpected weight in Yexi's chest, something like regret mixed with relief. "Cough, I was just passing by," Ghost Leopard muttered. "Passing by." With that, he turned and walked steadily toward his residence. He didn't know what had happened, only that his instincts told him something was off, and it was better to leave early. As he went, the window of the room next to Yexi's opened a sliver, and Ling Yuan's eyes peered through. She watched the scene outside. It wasn't just Yexi and Qian Renshui who had stayed up all night. Ling Yuan had as well. Her room was right beside Yexi's, and with a titled Douluo's perception, she had learned almost everything that had occurred last night. For what she hadn't seen, she had already filled in the blanks herself. Still, Ling Yuan didn't make a sound or reveal herself. Appearing rashly in matters like this could easily offend someone. Just look at how Ghost Leopard had somehow offended the young lord without even knowing how. Ling Yuan had decided, unless young Miss summoned her, she would not leave her room today. At the entrance to the room, Yexi glanced where the Ghost Leopard had gone, then looked at Qian Renshui and slowly lowered her head. "Sister, please come in first." She stepped into the room. Qian Renshui followed and closed the door behind them. Yexi sat before the dressing mirror and reached for the wooden comb, but Qian Renshui took it first. "Sheer, let me help you." Her fingers moved gently through Yexi's hair. Yexi only gave a small nod and remained quiet. A thoughtful look crossed Qian Renshui's face as she continued combing, turning over some private decision in her mind. Yexi fidgeted, pinching the corner of her sleeve, eyes wandering. The combing finished quickly. Qian Renshui set the comb down. The crisp sound startled Yexi back to the present. As Yexi was about to rise, she felt herself lighten, then was drawn into Qian Renshui's arms. Qian Renshui laid her on her lap, gazing at Yexi's delicate face, and leaned in. Their lips met. Yexi trembled involuntarily. Qian Renshui's cheeks flushed. Yexi's hand moved reflexively, but was caught by Qian Renshui's wrist. Slowly, Yexi relaxed against her. After a long moment, they parted, both cheeks tinged with color. "Sheer, I like you. Will you say yes? I'll use the entire Heaven Do Empire as a betrothal gift." Qian Renshui stroked Yexi's hair, her voice soft and certain. Yexi met her gaze but said nothing for a long while. Qian Renshui didn't push. She waited. Finally, Yexi's head bowed. Grandpa's sighed. Her voice was barely audible, but Qian Renshui heard it all the same. "I'll speak to him," Qian Renshui promised. "There won't be any problems," she murmured with an unprecedented confidence. Yexi nodded, a soft sound, then fell silent. Qian Renshui smiled, genuinely happy, and wrapped an arm gently around Yexi's waist, breathing in the faint fragrance on her. Time slipped by until it was nearly 7 in the morning. Reluctantly, Qian Renshui let go. "Time's almost up. I should return to the Imperial Palace now. Sheer, you take care of what you need to do, then we'll go back to Spirit City together." Qian Renshui cupped Yexi's face. I'll be as quick as I can." A pale golden light shimmered across Qian Renshui's body as she shifted back into Shui Qinghe's appearance. "I'll head back first." Shui Qinghe walked toward the entrance, and Yexi followed. She only returned to Frost Snow Pavilion once Shui Qinghe's figure had disappeared from sight. In the back dining hall, a maid set a bowl of tremella soup in front of Yexi. She stirred it absent-mindedly, lost in thought. Ling Yuan came in quietly and stood behind her, saying nothing. Outside Frost's snow pavilion, two disciples on gate duty spotted Juju King approaching and immediately stepped forward to block her. Frost's snow pavilion, no unauthorized entry. They scrutinized her as they spoke. Please inform Pavilion Master Ye that Juju King has come to visit. Juju King bowed politely to the disciples. The two guards hesitated. From her plain dress, they assumed she was not a disciple of a prominent family or sect. Those disciples usually dressed more conspicuously. Our pavilion master is not someone just anyone can meet, one disciple said, shaking his head and motioning for her to leave. I am Juju King, second miss of the Nether Duke's mansion of the Star Luo Empire. I have come to visit the pavilion master. She produced a token of identity and handed it over. The disciple examined it carefully. Though he did not recognize the Nether Duke's mansion's token, the material and craftsmanship suggested it was genuine. Young miss, please wait a moment. According to the rules, if there's no urgent matter, we cannot report across ranks. The disciple on the left said this, and then turned to enter the pavilion to inform his superior. Juju King stood there and waited. Even as the second miss of the Nether Duke's mansion, she wasn't sure whether she could secure an audience with Pavilion Master Ye. This was the Heaven Do Empire, not the Star Luo Empire, after all. Chapter 213, Juju King's Arrival. Soon the disciple who had gone to report returned and saluted Juju King. Young miss, the Pavilion Master requests your presence. At the words, two other disciples stepped aside to clear a path, allowing Juju King to enter the Frost Snow Pavilion. She thanked them and stepped in. A maid promptly came forward to lead her. When they reached the threshold of the main hall, the maid stopped, bowed respectfully, and indicated that Juju King should proceed alone. Inside, the main hall felt sparse. Only Hallmaster Ye Qingshe and a handful of deacons were busy with paperwork. Greetings, Hallmaster Ye. Juju King bowed deeply, her tone deferential. I am the second miss of the Nether Duke's mansion of the Star Luo Empire. Ye Qingshe glanced up, her expression businesslike. Are you here on a matter for the Pavilion Master? She asked. If it isn't urgent, tell me. If I cannot decide, I will report it to the Pavilion Master myself. Her tone was neither warm nor cold. Juju King's noble lineage meant little here. This was the Heaven Do Empire, not the Star Luo Empire, and the Frost Snow Pavilion answered to its own hierarchy. I came to ask the Pavilion Master for a favor, Juju King said respectfully. Ye Qingshe studied her for a moment, weighing the request. Juju King remained bowed, trying to hide how anxious she was for an answer. At last, Ye Qingshe waved to a deacon. Go and truthfully report this to the Pavilion Master, she instructed. You may rise. Whether the Pavilion Master will see you is not for me to decide. Juju King stood quietly as the deacon left. 10 minutes passed before he returned, bowed and said, Come with me. The Pavilion Master is waiting in the back hall. The deacon led the way. They entered the pavilion's back dining room. At a side table, Pavilion Master Ye Shi sipped tremella soup, her clear, pale eyes watching Juju King approach. Please sit. Juju King began. Ye Shi raised a hand and cut her off gently. Skip the pleasantries. Tell me directly what you want and what you can offer. Rash interference in the affairs between the Star Luo Empire and the Nether Duke's mansion will bring no benefit to the Frost Snow Pavilion. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief, speaking calmly. There was a quiet severity in her words. Juju Qing's request was likely modest, but would touch on a sensitive matter, the Star Luo Empire's crown prince and the Empire's strict prohibition against external interference. Juju Qing hesitated, then spoke. I need a way to withdraw completely from the Star Luo Empire's succession. I hope the Frost Snow Pavilion can help. Ye Shi's eyes were steady. I can find a way to remove you from the succession, but the process will inevitably bring trouble to our pavilion. There is always a price to pay. Juju Qing met her gaze. Ye Shi's eyes were calm, like a deep night sea. Hearing that there was a possible way felt like a sudden dawn, but Juju Qing found herself at a loss when it came to what she might offer in return. Nothing she had seemed worth the pavilion taking on trouble for her. Ye Shi saw the hesitation. If you cannot decide right now, take your time. You may come to me any time before the end of the competition. I look forward to your choice. Zhu Qing bowed once more and left the dining room. Ye Shi watched her go, then turned her attention toward the Star Luo Empire beyond the pavilion's windows. I'll be interested in what she decides, she murmured, and rose. Ling Yuan stepped half a pace behind her as always. 10 days later, at the Dohun Arena, the Frost Snow Pavilion's viewing area was filled. Ye Shi sat quietly watching the matches below. In the past 10 days, she had settled many pavilion affairs. Tianshui Academy had officially joined the Frost Snow Pavilion a few days earlier, and its dean, Shui Wuchang, had become the pavilion's 4th hall master. Graduates of Tianshui Academy could now preferentially join the Frost Snow Pavilion, their positions determined by their strength. I'll leave the competition matters to you all, Ye Shi said to those beside her. I need to be in Spirit City. I'll meet you there. Duguyan smiled at her. No problem. Xiaoxi, leave this to us. You can rest assured. By the way, when are you planning to leave? Duguyan asked softly. Ye Shi glanced at the time. I'll depart Heaven Dew City for Spirit City around noon. Chapter 214. Going home, Ye Shi's unease. She left at noon? Duguyan murmured. Yes, I've arranged everything here, Ye Shi answered softly, clasping her hands together. Duguyan listened, asked no more, and merely nodded. Time passed. At noon, Ye Shi rose, greeted everyone, and set out for the Frost Snow Pavilion with Ling Yuan. At the pavilion's entrance, a carriage waited. Qian Renshui lifted the carriage curtain and waved. Ye Shi climbed in, while Ling Yuan took the reins. As Ling Yuan guided the carriage away, Qian Renshui settled behind Ye Shi and put her arms around her waist, breathing in the faint scent that clung to her. Ye Shi rested against Qian Renshui and looked toward Spirit City with her clear blue eyes. Unlike other returns home, she felt oddly uneasy this time, like a child who had done something wrong and was about to face their parents. Xiaoxi, it's all right, Qian Renshui whispered. I'm here. She took Ye Shi's hand and laced their fingers together. Ye Shi nodded slightly, trying to soothe the turmoil inside her. Outwardly calm, she remained tense beneath the surface. The carriage moved in silence. Once they had left Heaven Dew City, it quickened. Half a month later, they arrived at Spirit City. The carriage stopped in front of the Supreme Pontiff Palace. Qian Renshui and Ye Shi stepped out hand in hand, and Ye Shi felt a new wave of anxiety, as if lead weighed down her legs. Qian Renshui looked composed, but was just as nervous. They exchanged a glance, inhaled sharply, and walked into the palace together, Ling Yuan following quietly. They did not linger, moving straight to the Hall of Offerings. When they pushed open the heavy doors and looked inside, both of them wanted to turn and run. Qian Daoliu and Bibi Dong sat in the front left and right seats. The other offerings were seated below them. The moment the doors opened, every pair of eyes in the hall turned to the two newcomers. Shuer, Xiaoxi, you're back. Qian Daoliu's kindly voice echoed through the hall. Seeing them holding hands, he assumed, as did most there, that they were merely two close sisters. Qian Renshui gave a polite cough. Grandfather, She felt the timing might be wrong. Supreme Pontiff, I have something to discuss. Qian Daoliu waved a hand. Let's talk about it another time. Bibi Dong rose as if to leave, but Qian Renshui stepped forward, released Ye Shi's hand, and walked quickly to stand before Qian Daoliu. Ye Shi followed, face slightly awkward. Shuer, tell me what's on your mind, Qian Daoliu said, his expression turning serious. Grandfather, if I like someone, would you support me? Qian Renshui asked, lowering her eyes and sneaking a glance at Ye Shi. Ye Shi's head dipped as well, and she clenched the edge of her robe, suddenly very uneasy. Someone tried to steal his family's cabbage. Qian Daoliu blinked in surprise. The other offerings leaned forward, curious. Bibi Dong, who had been about to leave, stopped and looked back. Something about their behavior told her this was no ordinary confession. Qian Renshui's flustered look was normal enough, but why was Ye Shi also so nervous? It felt wrong, very wrong. Shuer, Qian Daoliu said slowly, if you like someone, Grandpa will support you. Who has won our Shuer's heart? What if it isn't a talented young man? Qian Renshui murmured, her voice dropping, but a favored daughter of heaven? A hush fell. Ye Shi's ears flushed violently. Qian Daoliu and the others froze for a long moment. Bibi Dong fixed her gaze on Ye Shi, trying to process the impossible notion that had just been spoken aloud. A favored daughter of heaven? Qian Daoliu frowned, then relaxed into a warm smile. Well, Whatever the person, if it is mutual and makes you happy, Grandpa will support you. Qian Renshui lifted her head, a playful glint in her eyes. So you agree? Agree to what? Qian Daoliu asked, then looked at Yishi beside her. Seeing how red Yishi's ears had become, realization dawned on him. His 2 cabbages hadn't been stolen, they had simply grown together. Grandfather. Yishi stammered, finally meeting his gaze. Qian Renshui took her hand again, fingers entwined. Grandfather, she echoed. No words were needed after that. Their joined hands said everything. The Hall of Offerings was utterly silent, every pair of eyes fixed on Qian Renshui and Ye Shi. Both girls' faces burned with color. Ling Yuan, who had followed them in, pretended indifference and stared up at the ceiling, as if she had seen nothing. Chapter 215, Mutual Affection. Qian Daoliu's gaze flicked back and forth between Qian Renshui and Ye Shi. His face stayed composed, but his restless eyes betrayed the turmoil in his heart. He had never imagined that his 2 granddaughters would fall in love with each other and want to be together. Yet, seeing their resolute expressions and the way they held hands, words were unnecessary, their intentions were clear. Qian Daoliu would never break up a loving couple. Feelings weren't something he could command, and there was no moral barrier between them. Ye Shi was adopted, and there was no blood relation. He thought it over at length. If they wanted to be together, what harm would it do? Both Qian Renshui and Ye Shi were outstanding among the younger generation, each favored by divinity. If they both became divinities, they would have boundless lifespan and could be together forever. They were both his granddaughters. Adopted or not, they were his flesh and blood. He couldn't bear to say a harsh word, much less try to break them apart. The offerings in the hall sat in tacit silence. This was family business for the Qian clan. It would be inappropriate for outsiders to speak rashly. Bibi Dong said nothing either, not because she approved, but because her words would likely have no effect. Her relationship with Qian Renshui had never been close, and she regarded Ye Shi with even less fondness. Ye Shi, in Bibi Dong's eyes, was nothing more than a black sesame tangyuan. She kept her gaze on Qian Daoliu, waiting to see what he would decide. Qian Renshui and Ye Shi stood there with their fingers tightly intertwined, looking at the patriarch with steady, hopeful eyes. After a long moment, Qian Daoliu exhaled and regarded them with a kind, indulgent smile. Xuer, Xier, are you 2 in love with each other? The question made the 2 exchange surprised looks. Things were going more smoothly than they had dared hope. They nodded together. Yes. Their voices were steady and resolute. Qian Daoliu chuckled softly, his tone gentle and grandfatherly. If it's mutual, how could your grandfather object? Grandpa. Qian Renshui and Ye Shi exchanged a look, then embraced him at the same time. All right, you 2 aren't children anymore. Be steady from now on. Qian Daoliu smoothed their hair. That his 2 cabbages had grown up together mattered not at all to him. Both had the potential to become divinities. If he succeeded in cultivating both, his achievements in the Qian family would be unparalleled. Even if the ancestors had great merits, none had produced 2 divinities. If these 2 became divinities, it would be an unmatched, perhaps unrepeatable feat. Young Lord, Second Miss, Qingluan began, may you have everlasting harmony. The phoenixes sing in unison. Twin lotuses bloom, another offering added. Mandarin ducks fly wing to wing, came another voice. The rest of the offerings chimed in with similar well wishes. The 6th and 7th offerings glanced at each other, then shrugged and agreed. They're right. We feel the same. Hearing everyone's congratulations, Qian Renshui and Ye Shi blushed faintly, but smiled with deep affection. Bibi Dong rose quietly, glanced at the pair, and left the Hall of Offerings without a word, heading toward the Supreme Pontiff Palace. No one paid her much mind as she departed. After a while, the hall settled. Qian Renshui and Ye Shi took seats, but kept their hands clasped, neither willing to let go. Qian Daoliu signaled to the others that they could take their leave. One by one, the offerings filed out toward their residences. When they were gone, only Qian Daoliu, Qian Renshui, and Ye Shi remained in the vast hall. Grandpa, there's something I want to ask you for help with. Ye Shi's face grew serious as she addressed Qian Daoliu on the main seat. What is it, Xier? Tell me, he said kindly, though already inwardly bracing himself, wondering if someone had bullied his granddaughter and whether he'd need to go fetch the angel's sword. I've finished the first trial of the Asura God's test, Yeshi began. But the second trial is much harder. It requires taking the Asura demon sword from the Slaughter King and becoming the new Slaughter King. The current Slaughter King is Tang Chen, she continued. I don't have enough time to do it on my own, so I want to ask for your help, Grandpa. Qian Daoliu heard something else in her words. Yeshi's claim that the second trial was too difficult and she needed his help crystallized into a single meaning, that Tang Chen stood in the way of her becoming a divinity. His hope to cultivate both granddaughters into divinities was everything to him. At that thought, his eyes sharpened, like a blade ready to be drawn. Tang Chen, he said quietly, but beneath the calm, the tide of anger surged. Grandpa, Tang Chen has been parasitized by the nine-headed bloody crimson bat king, Yeshi explained. He's not himself anymore, so his strength should be reduced somewhat. She told Qian Daoliu everything she knew about the matter. Qian Daoliu fell silent in thought, his gaze drifting towards Slaughter City. Qian Renshui and Yeshi said nothing, waiting patiently as the patriarch considered the situation. Chapter 2:16. Seer, I'll give you a stamp. The sharpness in Qian Daoliu's eyes softened until he looked like an ordinary old man. It's been a long time since I left the Hall of Offerings, he said. Seeing old friends and stretching my limbs will be good for me. His voice was calm, but a spark of battle intent began to stir within him. In today's Spirit Master world, only a few people could truly arouse that spark. Tang Chen of the Clear Sky sect and Poseidon of Sea God Island. He remembered how he had lost to Tang Chen by half a move before. If they met again, he was determined not to lose. Besides, Tang Chen had been parasitized by the nine-headed bloody Crimson Bat King, and his strength had declined. At their level, even the smallest difference could change the outcome of a fight. Thank you, Grandpa. Yeshi smiled, her eyes bright with joy. Qian Daoliu returned the smile, his gaze full of indulgent affection. Sheer, you've just returned. Go rest for now, he said. Today's been busy. I'm getting on in years. I should go back and recuperate. Qian Daoliu rose and walked toward his residence, leaving Qian Renshui and Yeshi alone in the main hall. Qian Renshui watched Yeshi, and a sly look flickered across her face. Sheer, she said. What is it? Yeshi asked, fidgeting. Nothing, Qian Renshui replied, but the glint in her eyes said otherwise. In the god realm, within the angel temple, the angel god sat on his throne with a plate of fruit at his side. He was calmly sampling the fruit, but his attention remained fixed on a screen that replayed the scene from the Hall of Offerings. Is it a bit improper for me to be watching this? He murmured to himself, though he kept watching and occasionally popped a piece of fruit into his mouth. When the two figures separated on the screen, he felt a slight disappointment and waved his hand to close it. The Angel 9 Trials assessment seems ready to begin, he noted. He toyed with the idea of altering the assessment. After a moment's thought, he decided a small change would be better. He snapped his fingers, and a thread of golden light shot from his fingertips, vanishing into the Angel Temple and heading for his legacy secret realm. A sly smile touched his lips as his pale golden eyes slowly closed. Back in the Hall of Offerings, Qian Renshui's smile was soft. Yeshi nervously toyed with the corner of her robe, a small gesture that Qian Renshui found adorable. Sheer, do you want to go for a walk? She asked gently. Okay, Yeshi answered, and they set off together. They walked along the bluestone path as maids bowed respectfully along the way. By the time the sun began to set and the sky darkened, they were approaching their residences. Yeshi pointed toward her own house. My residence is over there. I know, Qian Renshui said, then turned to a nearby maid. Tomorrow, arrange for some maids to move all of Sheer's belongings into my room. Yes, young lord, the maid replied, and hurried off to make the arrangements. Qian Renshui led Yeshi back to her own room. Back inside, exhausted from the fortnight of travel, the two of them simply lay down on the bed. Their eyes closed quickly, and sleep took them almost at once. Late at night, Qian Renshui, deep in sleep, suddenly heard a noble, reverberating voice in her mind. Angel 9 Trials First Trial, about to begin. The legacy holder shall proceed to the Angel's secret realm to receive the first assessment. Her eyes opened slowly. She tightened the hold on Yeshi beside her for a moment, then carefully sat up. Just as she was about to get out of bed, a hand tugged at her arm. Yexi's sapphire blue eyes blinked open. Sister, it's so late. Where are you going? Yeshi sat up, yawning and still half asleep. The angel god's assessment, she mumbled. I'll just go to the angel's secret realm to see what it's about. You can sleep a little longer, Qian Renshui said gently. She stroked Yexi's hair, then slipped out of the room. Seeing Qian Renshui leave, Yeshi nodded, leaned back, and lay down again. Outside the room, Qian Renshui spotted Qian Daoliu not far off. Grandpa. She quickened her pace and joined him. Shuer, why are you alone? Where's Xie? Qian Daoliu scanned behind her but didn't see Yeshi. It's late. I told Xie to keep sleeping. Should I call her to come along? Qian Renshui looked to him. Call Xie too. Qian Daoliu nodded. Qian Renshui went back inside and came out with a still sleepy Yeshi. Qian Daoliu led the way toward the Douluo hall, with Qian Renshui and Yeshi close behind. They entered the angel's secret realm. The first thing before them was the angel statue, but tonight it was different. The lifelike figure glowed faintly, radiating a lofty, sacred light that felt untouchable. A majestic voice echoed through the realm. Angel 9 Trials, first trial, about to begin. Legacy holder, Qian Renshui. Companion, Yeshi. First trial, kiss your loved one for half an hour. Completion deadline, 1 day. Qian Renshui blinked and rubbed at her ear, wondering if she'd misheard. Yeshi, roused from drowsiness, widened her eyes. What did it say? She whispered. Am I still half asleep? Did I mishear? Their gazes met, then both turned to Qian Daoliu. His face was odd, confirming they hadn't imagined it. The two of them glanced back at the glowing statue, rolling their eyes inwardly. Shameless old man, they thought. It's so late, Qian Daoliu said aloud. Go back to sleep. With that, he walked out of the angel's secret realm, hands clasped behind his back. For most assessments, he might offer advice, but this one? Better to leave them be. Qian Renshui and Yeshi exchanged a helpless look as the realm fell quiet. Qian Renshui sat down, watching Yeshi. Shuer, about this assessment. Her cheeks flushed, and she trailed off. Yeshi understood at once. She shot an annoyed glance at the angel statue, cursed the shameless old man silently, then moved closer. Yeshi sat in Qian Renshui's lap, wrapped her arms around her neck, closed her eyes, and leaned in. Their lips met. Qian Renshui closed her own eyes. Time slipped by. The majestic voice sounded again. Angel 9 Trials. First trial. Completed. Reward for legacy holder. All spirit ring years increased by 50 years. Angel God intimacy plus 5%. Rapport with companion plus 10%. Reward for companion. All spirit ring years increased by 50 years. Rapport with legacy holder plus 10%. Angel 9 Trials. Second trial. Ascend the 9-tiered stairs. Legacy holder. Qian Renshui. Companion Yeshi. Completion deadline, 3 years. When the announcement ended, Qian Renshui and Yeshi separated, both with flushed faces. Before them, 9 massive tiers of stairs had materialized. The steps were wreathed in golden flames. Even from a distance, the heat radiating from them was almost tangible. This one's serious, Yeshi murmured. Qian Renshui stroked her hair and studied the stairs. Let's test the first tier, see how intense it is. Then we'll go back to sleep. She stepped forward. Yeshi followed. They planted their feet on the first tier. The moment they did, a searing heat that seemed to burn into the soul and a crushing downward force washed over them. Qian Renshui adjusted quickly. The first tier's intensity was within her tolerance. Though Yeshi's spirit rank wasn't as high, her body was hardy. She adapted as well. This test is definitely meant to temper the physique, Yeshi said softly. Yes, Qian Renshui agreed. We'll rest first, then return and attempt the second trial. They descended and left the angel's secret realm, their figures soon disappearing into the night. After they departed, a figure coalesced in front of the angel statue, the angel god herself. Shameless old man? She murmured, amused. Is that what they're calling me? She leaned against the statue with a faint smile. They're definitely not talking about me. In her current guise, she looked barely 20. By any measure, she was hardly old. With a final serious glance at her youthful reflection, she melted back into points of light that flowed into the statue as if she'd never appeared. The angel's secret realm fell silent once more. Chapter 218, Angel Assessment. Early morning in the antique room, Qian Renshui and Yeshi sat before the dressing mirror while maids stood behind them, combing out their loose hair. In short order, their hair was neat. They rose, left the room, and headed to the pavilion for breakfast. A sumptuous spread waited on the stone table. Qian Daoliu was already seated, watching for them. Qian Renshui and Yeshi sat down and began to eat. Shuer, Xier, Qian Daoliu asked as they ate, "How is the angel assessment going?" Both girls flushed slightly. "We passed the first assessment," Qian Renshui said, lowering her eyes. "We plan to try the second assessment later, to see our limits. If you run into any trouble during the tests, come to your grandfather," Qian Daoliu said with a kind smile. "We know, grandfather," they answered in unison, exchanging amused glances. After breakfast, they went to the angel's secret realm inside Douluo Hall. Qian Daoliu watched them go with a gratified smile. Inside the angel's secret realm, they faced a great flight of stairs and climbed without hesitation. Having tested the first layer the night before, they skipped it and went straight to the second. The moment they stepped onto the second layer, they felt a blast of heat and a heavy gravity. Compared to the first layer, the heat was nearly doubled, and the gravity had intensified twofold. Yeshi stared at the enormous steps, thinking. The height of each step was almost as tall as she was, and with the crushing gravity, the easy leaps from the first layer were impossible. If they couldn't jump, they would have to climb. "Sister, my limit is around the third layer," Yeshi said seriously, feeling the pressure already on the second. "I think I'm around the fourth or fifth," Qian Renshui replied. She had begun cultivation earlier, and her spirit power rank was higher than Yeshi's, so it made sense her physical limit would be higher. Qian Renshui put a hand on the third step and, with a small push, easily vaulted onto it. Feeling the intensity there confirmed her sense. With each ascent, the scorching heat roughly doubled again, and the gravity about doubled. Crouched on the third step, Qian Renshui reached down to help Yeshi up. As soon as their hands met, both froze in surprise. Their gazes dulled. They were both aware, with growing horror, that their clothes were disappearing, not vanishing, but turning to ash under the relentless heat. Their faces flushed at once. Eyes averted, they both looked toward the lifelike angel statue at the front of the realm. "Old pervert," Qian Renshui spat under her breath. Yeshi said nothing, but her blue eyes were a mixture of shame and anger. She briefly fantasized about taking the slaughter sword and hacking at the statue, then quickly suppressed the thought. "Xier, come up first," Qian Renshui said, coughing lightly and looking away. Yeshi nodded and let Qian Renshui pull her up to the third step. After Yeshi steadied herself there, Qian Renshui climbed to the fourth. Although she could have pressed on to the fifth, the likely limit, she chose to stop. There was no need to rush. This wasn't a contest. For now, improving her physique on the fourth step was just right. They sat and meditated where they were, the heat eating away at their garments, but unable to harm their bodies. Yishi's eyes kept darting to the angel statue, her resentment toward the angel god growing. She vowed in her head that what had seemed like a reasonable second assessment last night was nothing but the work of an old pervert. If the golden flame couldn't harm people, why couldn't it be tuned so it didn't incinerate clothes? She silently cursed the angel god and the unfairness of the test. Time passed. The initial embarrassment faded as they settled into cultivation and focused on strengthening their bodies. They sat cross-legged and worked through the regimen, improving their physiques in the searing air. At some point, Yeshi's ears twitched at a sound behind her. She opened her eyes and saw Qian Renshui descending barefoot toward her. "Xier, let's head back," Qian Renshui said, reaching to gently stroke Yeshi's hair. "Sister, how can we?" Yeshi began, but the rest of the sentence was unnecessary. Qian Renshui pulled out the small storage ring spirit tool from her wrist and dangled it in front of Yeshi. Yeshi's eyes lit up. "I should put a few sets of clothes in my storage ring too," she said. "A few won't be enough," Qian Renshui replied with a smile. "Make it more than 10 sets." Yeshi resolved then and there to stock her storage ring with plenty of backups. They left the angel's secret realm together, a new plan already forming between them. Chapter 219, An Old Friend Visits. Qian Renshui took 2 sets of clothes from her storage ring and handed one to Yeshi. The two changed in the angel's secret realm. Because Qian Renshui was a few years older, her clothes hung a little loosely on Yeshi. The shoulder straps slipped now and then, teasingly revealing her pale skin. Yeshi shot a disgruntled look at the angel statue. Qian Renshui only smiled and led her out. They walked through Douluo Hall. Seeing Yeshi barefoot on the floor, Qian Renshui scooped her up and carried her by the waist toward her residence. It was only about 3 in the afternoon. Xier, let's stroll through Spirit City later, Qian Renshui suggested softly. We can buy a few sets of ice silkworm silk clothing and see if they can stand the heat on the steps. Okay, I'll change first, then we'll go, Yeshi replied without hesitation. She was all for it. Even if the ice silkworm silk might not withstand the golden flames on the steps, it was sensible to buy a few spare outfits and keep them in her storage ring. Back in the room, Yeshi pulled out her usual clothes from the wardrobe and changed, while Qian Renshui sat on the bed watching her with a quiet smile. As soon as Yeshi finished, they left together and headed for the Supreme Pontiff Palace, fingers intertwined. Bibi Dong sat in the main seat, dealing with political matters, with Hu Liana standing quietly at her side. When she saw Qian Renshui and Yeshi enter, Bibi Dong lifted her head and glanced at their joined hands. Qian Renshui looked up in return. Neither spoke. They walked past the throne and out toward the busiest street in Spirit City. Once they departed, Bibi Dong lowered her head and resumed her paperwork. Their relationship is really close, Hu Liana said softly, watching the direction they'd gone. Bibi Dong raised an eyebrow and turned her gaze toward Hu Liana. After a moment she said, Nana, from now on, without my permission, you may not take a male partner. After a pause she added, and not a female one either. Hu Liana's expression went blank, as though her mind had stalled. She understood not taking a partner, cultivation had to come first, but the second line left her puzzled. Seeing her confusion, Bibi Dong gave no further explanation. Silence settled again in the Supreme Pontiff Palace, broken only by the scratch of pen on paper as Bibi Dong returned to her duties. On Spirit City's bustling main street, a tall woman wrapped in a crimson robe walked toward the Supreme Pontiff Palace. Only a sweep of sea-blue hair escaped the hood. She glanced at Qian Renshui and Yeshi by the roadside and frowned, a look of quiet thought crossing her face. There's a slight resemblance to someone I once knew, she murmured. I wonder if she's in Spirit City. If not, finding her will be difficult. Her gaze lingered for a moment, then she turned away and continued down the street. Though the crimson cloak hid much of her, every movement spoke of nobility. She didn't hurry, yet in a few flashes she had vanished and reappeared, already at the palace entrance. Standing a short distance from the gates, she closed her eyes and sent out a probing thread of mental force toward the palace. Qian Daoliu, an old acquaintance, has come to visit. Could you come out to meet her? She transmitted by sound method along the mental probe. In the Hall of Offerings, Qian Daoliu, who had been resting with his eyes closed, opened them and stared in the direction of the voice. The tone was familiar. The sender, an old acquaintance. Poseidon, he murmured and rose to meet her. At the palace entrance, Qian Daoliu's face broke into a smile as he approached the woman. Long time no see, Poseidon, he said, warmth in his voice. Poseidon lifted the hood of her crimson robe, revealing soft features and a cascade of sea-blue hair down her back. She looked surprisingly young, perhaps 30 or so, and her gentle expressions combined with an air of nobility to make her strikingly beautiful. Let's talk in the Hall of Offerings, Qian Daoliu suggested. Poseidon nodded, and the two walked along the bluestone path toward the hall. As they went, Qian Daoliu asked softly, You haven't left Sea God Island in decades. Why come to my spirit hall now? Poseidon's voice flowed like water. By divine oracle, I was told to retrieve my god's legacy inheritor. The oracle didn't say where the inheritor was, only that I would find the answer in Spirit City. You've come to the right place then, Qian Daoliu replied with a hint of coyness. My two granddaughters aren't here in the Hall of Offerings at the moment. When they return, you'll have your answer. Poseidon smiled. I would like to see your two granddaughters. At the mention of his granddaughters, Qian Daoliu's smile widened and a soft, involuntary happiness showed on his face. Chapter 220, Situation. Situation explanation. Chapter 215 was blocked. I won't go into the reasons. The original content was taken down for 2 days and has since been revised during review. I don't know what it's been changed into now. As a result, Chapter 215 may show a mismatch between its title and its content. I don't know why. It was flagged by the review team. QAQ.